Hello and welcome back. Today we're asking the question, did Tecumseh actually lead the Indian raid on Morgan Station? The reason this is in question is because we know he was at the final battle. There were military men there, Indian fighters, who could recognize him on sight. There was no one, however, living at the station that recognized Tecumseh on sight. So we're going to try to determine whether or not he was here. In my book, I have him here, and there's reason for it, and you'll see it at the end of the video. In the meantime, the Indians were coming down the creek, riding along this embankment here, following the creek. When they got about to this location, they started hearing a church service and singing and preaching taking place up on the hill where the fort was. So now we're going to show you the path that the Indians took to get up to the fort, not only on that Sunday when they went up and observed, but also on the day of the attack, which would have been April 1st, 1793. This water pass here is what gave the Indians egress to the top of the ridge. So they came from the creek here behind me and followed this path up to the top of the ridge. Then, as it is today, there would have been many areas that would have been difficult to cross, especially when you're trying to sneak up on a foe on top of the hill. Yet the Indians came this direction and made their way up to the top. However, one of the things they would not have had dealt with is this. This is multiflora rose. You can see it all through here. It was brought to the United States some years after the attack on Morgan Station. Now, it's been some time since I've taken this path, and it is a very difficult path to take. And as I look at it here, hopefully that captures exactly how rough that climb would have been. Not impossible and not hard to do relatively quietly, just a lot of rocks to maneuver over and whatnot. And in the book, I wrote it as if they did exactly that they followed the creek all the way up. But as I stand here today and I look at this, I think it more likely that they took this path and went up on the hill using the trees in the creek to screen them. Oops. Yeah, the more that I look at this, the more I'm convinced that they got out of the creek at some point to make their way up here. When I was a young man, I would have climbed it, but not today. We're about 2/3 up the route that the Indians came, and you can see we've come up from down there, and they still got a ways to go to get up there where they were, and that they could see what was going on over at the fort. So, but it's time for me to change up a little bit, and I'm going to take the gator from now on. I'm done climbing. Predator animals of all types, and the Indians as well, were known for their uncanny ability to use folds in the land. And you can see where they would have come up the creek there, and you've got this draw right here that I'm standing in that goes all the way up the ridge there. And the house, where the fort at the time, would have stood right over there. So the Indians more than likely used this path to come up here so that they could spy on the fort. And they used it again the following day for the attack. Now, this field here has been bush hogged. I'm going to take you over to a field that has not been bush hogged so that I can show you the broom sage. Now, this is the fall, and the attack did happen in the spring. However, broom sage will survive the winter. So come next spring, the broom sage will all still be standing there. We're sitting just northeast of the house, or at that time the fort, and we're about 100 yards east of where we were just standing a little bit ago. And this is broom sage. And you can see how someone could hide in this very easily. So where we're standing at now would have been the field where the church service was being held. There was a wagon pulled up used as a pulpit, and people were gathered here on blankets and sitting on benches, and even some wagons pulled around to the back, and the buckboards laid down and sitting on those. And so everyone had gathered here on Sunday for that service. And then Monday, the men returned to this spot, and they started sharpening hoes and plows and getting things ready. They were getting ready to start breaking the ground and prepping the ground in order to plant corn for that year. So with the men all out here getting ready, that puts the fort right here in front of us. And again, the gate would have been right here in this area, in the area of the driveway here, the main gate going in. And the attack would have come from that draw in the ground back there, that low spot. The Indians would have come up, and if you can see on the video, there's a telephone pole back there, and there was a cabin back there as well. And when the Indians came up, a few of them split off and attacked the cabin, and the rest came this way. And at that same moment, all the men from the fort who were getting ready to start working the ground had started out into the field and were working their way out to the field to start a day's work. So let's go back to our original question. Was Tecumseh here? Did he lead the attack that took place on Morgan Station? Now, Tecumseh was known for carrying a weapon that was heavily inlaid with brass. It was a very beautiful musket. There weren't very many like it. It was very rare. But with all that brass on there, it would glint and show in the sunshine. And there was one Indian in particular who ran up here and knelt and raised his musket to fire. And Harry Martin was at the gate, who fired back at the Indian. They both fired simultaneously, and neither one of them hit the other. The Indian who fired, all who saw it, talked about the sun glinting off of that musket, how bright it was, and there just weren't that many muskets around here with all that brass on them. So, in my book, and in my personal belief, I tend to believe that Tecumseh did indeed lead the raid on Morgan Station. Thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate it very much. Tune in for our next video, and we'll be talking about Murderer's Branch versus Murderer's Cave, and what the truth there is. We'll discuss it next time. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.